Good evening and welcome everyone. Welcome to the March edition of the Multiple Births Canada webinar series. Tonight we're going to be talking about kids in school and specifically multiple birth children in the school system. But before we get started with that, I would just like to go over a couple of logistical things with you. So first of all, and first and foremost, please ensure that your computer audio is turned on and turned up. If you can hear my voice, then you're doing great. Also, if the webinar freezes at any time, just refresh your browser or press F5 and it should come back. And also please note that this webinar is being recorded. We will have it available on demand on our YouTube channel sometime following the presentation tonight. Well, actually, it's not really a presentation tonight. It's more of a discussion, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. One other thing to note, there is on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a Skype Q&A area, and that's an area that you can type in any questions you have, and you can either type them in anonymously or tell us who you are, include your name if you want, however you want to do it. And what we'll do is, if it's something not related to the topic, we will just answer it, either Heather or myself. But if it's something that, it's a question for us to talk about in the webinar, we'll actually read it out aloud and then answer your question. So I'm just going to get us started, to get us all warmed up. Why don't you just type in, and I'm going to put this in, I'm horrible at typing and talking at the same time, so bear with me here. Why don't you just put into the Q&A who you are, if you would like to, who you are, and either what chapter you're from or what city you're with. So we'll just give a few minutes for anyone that wants to put that in. And I just put an announcement up there so that you should see that announcement. I said, please type in your name and location, and you should see that, and that's on the right-hand side. So you can type in your name and where you're hailing from, either your location or your chapter that you're with. And while you're doing that out, I'm also going to point out that at the top right-hand side of the screen in your browser, you'll see something that says survey. So you'll see support. It's not the support link, it's the survey link. If you click on that link, don't click on it now, we can, but anyways, make sure you click on that before you close your browser. That will take you to a survey that we would like to have you fill out. It just gives us some feedback on how you found the webinar and what topics you want us to hear about in the future, things like that. So, so we've got a couple people that are saying where they're from, so I hope you don't mind. We've got Paul from London and Melanie from Edmonton, Renee from Sudbury. Fantastic. Great. All right, so without further ado, this is who is on the other side of this webinar. We've got myself. I am Ruth Morton. I am the Director of IT and the Vice Chair for Multiple Births Canada. I'm also mom to two fantastic little boys, Noah and Daniel, who are age 9. And then my co-host is Heather. You want to say hello, Heather?
Hey, everyone. If you don't know who I am, I'm Heather. I am the Chair of Multiple Births Canada, and I have 4 wonderful, fabulous kids like Ruth. Maggie's 22, doing university. Katie is in grade 12, and my twins, Matt and Cassie, just started grade 9.
Excellent. And then we have a special guest on the line as well. We've got John Mascazine. And John is a professor of education at Ohio Dominican University, and he specializes in the school experiences around multiple birth children. So this is a fantastic topic, and we are so thrilled to have him there. John, do you want to give a little bit of your background?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for this opportunity, and everyone have a good evening. Yes, my background is as a school teacher of 12 years, and I always consider myself a teacher at heart. But then I returned and worked on my master's degree in learning styles And then I continued later on for the PhD, and I specialized in twins learning issues. And I've been researching that for the last 23 years and have presented at many national and international conferences. And it continues to be an issue that I work with my future teachers. I currently work with preparing future teachers, both elementary and middle school and high school teachers. So I try to bring some information in about twins and their learning needs into all the classes that I teach.
Well, fantastic. Thanks a lot for joining us today, John. I, again, really appreciate it. So the way that this is going to work is I'm going to leave this screen up with our 3 beautiful faces up there, and we're going to have a discussion. So we've got a couple of things we'll talk about over the course of the next 55 minutes or so. If you have a specific question you want us to cover, just type it into the Q&A, and we'll respond to that. So, and we'll likely answer it for everybody. So please go ahead over the course of the next little while we're talking. Please type in your questions or any comments you have, or what have you. So we're going to start with talking a bit about the typical challenges that multiple birth children, twins, triplets, typically have in school. And John, why don't you start us off in just talking about what you've seen?
Okay, thanks. The most common challenge are the stereotypes that often teachers have and that other children might have regarding twins. It's not uncommon that every teacher has their preconceived ideas about whether twins should be in the same class, or whether they will always work together if they are in the same room. And some of the stereotypes need to be demystified or need to be discussed. And some teachers don't have a lot of experience working with twins and multiples, and so that's an issue. The ones with more experience tend to have fewer stereotypes because they realize each family dynamic is different and each set of twins is different. So we have to be kind of flexible and understanding each family's needs, each child's needs. Then also students have preconceived ideas about what twins are like. It's not uncommon in kindergarten or in preschool for children to think that twins are, if they're identical, that twins are simply a copy of each other and they're always going to like the same things. And of course, it doesn't take long, then other children realize that that's not true and that each child has their own individual personality. One other issue is that twins need to spend time together every day. They should be able to see each other at the school at some point. We can talk about that and what that might look like in some schools. But even if they are in different classrooms, they need the time to realize and to feel safe that they know where their sibling twin is. And that's also goes for many times for other siblings too, not the same age siblings only.
Yeah,
And
I know that. Sorry, John, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Just two other ideas here as far as challenges. Obviously, being viewed as individuals and having both similar and different interests, because we don't want to capitalize too much on how they are the same without realizing also that in some ways they're different, and that just like any two members of the same family, there are some activities that they may enjoy together, and there are other activities and talents that they may share or they may have only as individuals. So we have to realize that that happens among twins and multiples as well. And then finding time in the space away from siblings is also a challenge in the school environment, because if there's one play going to be put on and both twins want to be in that play and they both happen to want to go out for the same part, then that can be a challenge also, not just for the twins, but for the adults who are trying to organize that event. So we may have to educate other members of the school community, not just the classroom teachers, about how they should treat our children fairly and in honest ways. So those are the main challenges that I see in the school environment.
Yeah, you raised some really interesting points there, and I do remember my own kids. They're very different, two boys, but very different. They even look differently. But one of the things, especially when they were younger, they didn't want to be playing together all the time, but they did want to know where each other was. So I remember in preschool and then in JK and SK, they just needed to know where each other was, and that was kind of their grand, like, oh, okay, he's over there, I'm good now. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So it's
we often refer to that as checking behavior.
yeah.
And parents too do that with their children when they're at home. You want to look up every once in a while and just notice where your kids are, notice that they're safe or that no one's taking over a situation. That's a good thing to have, and it's a very nice behavior that twins are showing, that's kind of compassionate for each other.
Yeah. Now, one other thing that I actually, when we were talking before we actually started this webinar, Heather, you mentioned that one of the things that you saw was that the report cards coming back for your twins were often very similar.
Yeah, so I do have boy-girl twins, and I have said that other than their last name, there really isn't much that they are alike. And I would get the same comments on their report card. And I remember one year that they had even forgotten to change all the he's to she's for my daughter's report card. And I remember going in and, talking to the teacher. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, he doesn't do his work. She does her work all the time. How can they have the same comments on their report card? And there was some, well, there's only standardized comments we can give. I'm like, okay, but they're not alike at all. So, it's one of those things as parents we really have to pay attention to. So.
And that does tend to happen more frequently with twins and with siblings. And, we have to kind of make teachers aware. And the more experienced teachers will probably be more aware of trying to look for the differences rather than the similarities.
Right.
Yeah. So we talked about some of the challenges. Are there any advantages to having multiple birth children in school?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes, many advantages. Hopefully more advantages than challenges. But again, it depends on the school itself and the teachers. There's definitely an increased attention and noticeability when you are a twin. And now that can be an advantage or a disadvantage depending on what the twins get involved with. But obviously, they're probably the first people that get known by other students. So they get known as one of the twins. And that's somewhat to their advantage. They also have a built-in reliable friend. That doesn't mean they're always going to be friendly toward each other, but I think siblings will stand up for each other in most cases. It's nice to know that there's someone else not only in the school, but it may be in the same grade that can relate to what you're going through. If one is struggling in a particular subject, if one is struggling with a friendship or a social setting, having another person there, your brother or sister there who can relate directly to the situation and also relate it to the parents in a different way. They can give a different perspective to the parents. That's a definite advantage as well. They are an emotional support as well, not just a social support, but also an emotional support. There is a strong emotional bond between twins. And, again, honoring that and respecting that can be a very great advantage in the school setting.
You know what I found, John? I found one of the great things was that my daughter could come home and tell me my son had had a bad day.
Yes.
Or vice versa. We had a situation right early in grade 9, and when we told him about it, he was like, all right, I'm going to deal with this. I got her back. You know, I'm going to be right there. And so for us, as they've gotten older, even that having someone there that they knew really became even more important.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really very, very important. And it's good for the parents too to see it, that each of their children can give a different perspective on some issues and dynamics that are happening in the classroom.
Yep.
So it's not always one-sided. Sometimes as a parent, it's hard to get the read of what's happening in the classroom. But if you've got two children there in that grade or in that classroom, you know, you'll get a better understanding of what's happening. It's
Yeah.
also a better way to communicate with the teacher. I think twins are a great opportunity to go and find out about your teacher, see if they have experiences with working with twins. Maybe they have twins in their family. It could open up channels of communication. I think twins are a great conversation starter. I mean, I don't think there's anyone that I haven't talked with that has some story with twins in their family, or that they know and have good friends that are twins. So I think it could really be a communication starter for many parents and their schools. And I think that's important, that we have to really educate the teachers, because some teachers are not getting the research and the information that they really should have before they teach and make certain decisions about twins, especially twin placement. We can talk about that separately if you want to. Well, it's really important that we work with teachers. And,
Yeah.
you know, I always appreciated it when a parent would come to me and really tell me how I can help their child best, because they're aware of things happening in the home that I might not be aware of, and I need to be sensitive to those issues. So those are some of the advantages as well. So.
Yeah, so I know we're going to be talking more about, you know, how to be an advocate and educating the educators, kind of. But let's talk about the big question. So, and we've already had somebody put this into the question Q&A about, you know, do I put my kids in the same class or do I put them in separate classes? Especially, you know, in this, the question was specifically around boy-girl twins, but I think it doesn't matter whether they're boy-boy, girl-girl, boy-girl. How do you figure out apart or together? You have like the silver bullet for us, John?
Yes, I think I do. The best answer is if we truly believe that each set of twins is unique and each family dynamic is somewhat unique, then the best policy is a flexible policy. And we do this for many other children in our schools, but we don't seem to be willing to do it for twins and multiples. And a good policy would be, before they enter kindergarten, or at least their second year of kindergarten, to have a conversation, and I'll talk about some instruments that are available as well, to help make the decision, because the decision should be based on the facts and relevant observations. One policy is not going to fit every child, and so a flexible policy says, let's look at the needs and the abilities of the children, and let's make an informed decision based on that. Now, many school systems have adopted this as their policy, and it seems to be working, and it seems to be bringing the teachers on board as well, and the administrators on board. And there are now instruments that can be used. I've sent them to Ruth, and we'll make them available to everyone so they can use these simple checklists that will help parents and teachers. And I think we should consult the twins themselves and let them know what the situation is. I interviewed several sets of twins, and it was disheartening to hear adults speak to me about how traumatized they were in kindergarten because they were suddenly separated and no one explained to them why. You know, it was not adequately explained, and you know, they thought they had done something wrong. And in one case, or a few cases, the young boys that this affected, these two young boys, they felt like it was to the point where they couldn't even see each other much during the day, except maybe 15 minutes for lunch. And so had someone explained to them and then allowed them time to be together during the day, the transition could have been made easier for them. So the best policy, a flexible policy with understanding the needs of the children. If you have boy-girl twins, it generally is easier. The decisions are easier. Sometimes they're more willing to be in separate classes. It's not that much of an issue, but we still need to understand the dynamic. The size of the school matters. The teachers matter. If the teachers have never had twins before, and this is the first set they're going to have in their class together, some teachers might be a little apprehensive. You might find other teachers in the school that have taught several sets of twins, and they would embrace every set that comes through the door, no problem. Then if one of the children actually has a learning disability, then that too should be addressed in the placement decision. Should the child, where are they going to get the services they need for their learning disability? They may be better served in a separate class from their sibling. So that might be that would be a consideration as well. So, and what is the history of the twins? We consult, we ask the parents, how often are they together? How were they in preschool? How are they at home? Do they spend time apart from each other? Are they comfortable in a variety of settings? Those are the issues that we need to talk about in order to make a wise placement decision. And that's why the best policy, again, is this flexible policy based on the needs of the child. It may take a little more time at the beginning of the school year, but it'll save hours and hours of frustration throughout the whole school year. So I think many teachers are willing to take that time at the beginning, and we do it for other children. We evaluate other children in professional ways. So I would push that a flexible approach with these checklists would be the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I just think back to, again, to our experience with my boys in their grade alone. There's 4 sets of twins, and this is not a big school.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting, because of course, as I'm sure most people here also know, that when you see another parent of twins or triplets, you kind of gravitate towards them. So we all know each other.
Yes.
And each set of parents have made different decisions for their kids. So for my kids, I kept them together in JK and SK and actually grade 1. And JK and SK was just because they were so small, and they needed to know where each other was. And then grade 1, I felt it was just such a big transition from kindergarten into a classroom setting where grade 1, you're sitting at a desk more, and I thought having them be together would help them with that transition. And then actually since then, we've separated them. So from grade 2 onward, they're now in grade 4. They've been in separate classes and again, that's just evaluating it every year. Mm-hmm. And they learn very differently. They're very different children. And actually, I was more afraid of them comparing themselves to each other. One is very suited to a learning environment in the school setting, and one is more of a freestyle learner, and so yeah, and this has worked out really well. But you know what? Every parent has done differently. I know there's a set of boy-girl twins that have been separated right from the beginning. There's a set of girl-girl twins that have been together and then separated, and now they're together. And it's funny. They are actually very similar looking. I don't know if they're identical, but if you don't know them, you might not know that they're not identical. And but the parents have decided that the pros outweigh the cons for them to be together in the classroom.
Right, and that's kind of what I've been hearing from parents and from grown-up or high school twins that reflect back on the placement decision. Many times, if the decision was made with information that was relevant at the time, it turned out to be a good decision. If it was made where people were not informed, especially the teachers or the school, or maybe even the parents are sometimes not informed about the option of putting the children in the same class or in separate classes, then those kinds of decisions are ones that often turn into regrets.
Yeah.
So again, they could be separated or they could be together, and it could turn out that that would be the best for that particular set of children. And I also like that it's not a decision we make once and then have to live with for the rest of our year or life. If it doesn't work out, the professional attitude, the professional way, is to reevaluate the situation, and then next year, change the situation, change the decision. A lot can happen, especially with children getting ill. A lot of twins who've had one sibling that became very ill, that were in separate classes, maybe the next year it'd be better if they were in the same class. The illness of one child can greatly impact the ability to concentrate of the other child or the other children in the family. And again, that's something I think we need to realize and kind of remind ourselves and our teachers that that could be a great impact on a young learner. So we like the idea that no decision has to be permanent, and the most important years for the placement issue is kindergarten through grade 3. Usually by grade 4, the twins themselves are able to go with whatever the situation calls for. Sometimes they'll request to be put into the same classroom if they haven't by grade 3. So maybe in grade 4 they could be in the same class. Or more often the opposite happens. If they're together up until grade 3, when they enter grade 4, or definitely by middle school, they're asking to be in different classes just because they naturally start gravitating toward different interests. So that's another piece of the puzzle that I think we should emphasize.
Yeah, so I remember when I was growing up in grade school, there was a number of twins, and they were always separated. And that seemed to be the school policy. Now, our school has been really good at listening to what John and I want. But actually, we're getting a couple of questions about, well, okay, I think my school is going to be forcing us or wanting us to do it this way. What if the school has a policy, or do schools have policies still to separate?
What I found in Ontario, Ruth, for the most part, is it's left up to the principal unless parents take it further than that. And I will never forget a call that we got into the office, which was very similar to some of the questions we're seeing tonight, which is the principal says all twins need to be separated. And I remember this principal said, I knew twin boys once, and when they were together, they were awful. And if they just separated them, they would have been much better. So my policy is to separate all twins. And that's really, really hard. And I think, John, you've done some research, I remember, about the littlest ones, and when they're forced to be separated, how traumatic that can actually be for them.
Yes, exactly. It is very traumatic. And again, those decisions that were based on one policy that did not allow for any flexibility are often the decisions that caused more problems than they solve. And it's very, very important that we arm ourselves with information and try to educate the administrators and teachers, because many times they may never have really thought about the impact of some of their decisions. And the latest research actually is going for the flexible policy. In fact, we have 22 states in the United States that actually wrote it into their state constitution that they have to give parents now the right to be part of that decision. So it was a movement in the late 90s, that in early 2000s, that some states were, some state organizations were really on board with trying to inform the teachers. And principals sometimes get an idea based on one or two experiences that is not necessarily based on research. And it's kind of funny because we all start out in education realizing that no one is identical, no one learns exactly the same way. And then we get to the point of twins and we say, now this is how all twins are going to learn, or all twins are going to work best. So I try to work with teachers and principals and administrators and really show them that a flexible policy is really research-based, because the research is pointing in that direction, and it's very clear. And every year we have more and more research studies that are verifying that this is the way to go.
There's one line that I've often given parents, and when they're saying, we have a question here about triplets, and they really think that the school's going to make them separate these kids come the fall. And my thing to school is to say, if we were a smaller school and we only had one JK class, you would keep them together.
Exactly. Yes.
So by saying that there could be a chance that there's only one class, then we need to move forward and work on why you think it's such an important thing, if it was a smaller school, that they would be together.
Exactly. Exactly. And in the case with triplets, if there is a need to separate, then we again would need to base that on educational reasons or social or behavioral reasons.
Yeah.
The needs of the children have to come first. Go ahead.
I was thinking back to the checklist. So everyone's going to be getting an email following this webinar, and it'll have a link to where you can download some documents. And a couple of those documents include checklists. And as parents, as you go through the checklist and start thinking about, your kids and how they relate to each other, are they competitive? Do they different abilities? Do the teachers confuse them, or whatever it happens to be? Like, as you kind of go through the checklist and think about your kids themselves, that will also give you a framework to approach and talk to your principal about why they should be separated or why they should be kept together.
Right. And your local twin organization is essential for helping you collect information and provide resources that schools and teachers can use. And if you go into the school and you say, look, I want to make this the best year for you and for my children, then I think you're going to get further than if you march in with, thinking that there's going to be a confrontation right off. Mm-hmm. So again, be very positive and, bring the information, bring the checklists. Both checklists, Pat Preedy developed the first checklist in the UK, and I was talking with her one time about how she came about the checklist, and she actually developed it because she was a headmaster in a school where she had 6 sets of twins going to enter that same year, and she needed a way to make good placement decisions. So that checklist is available and free. And I've made the checklist in my book online and freely available to whomever can use them. So I think it's essential that we get this information to the teachers and to the parents so we can start making wise decisions. I mean, that's the bottom line. Don't we want what's best for our children? And in the end, that'll be better for us as parents and as teachers too.
Yeah. And I think you have to approach it that the educators are likely just trying to make policy based on their own experiences. So this is your opportunity to broaden their perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think you'll find, I think Ruth, you mentioned something earlier, or maybe it was Heather. You gravitate towards other parents of twins, so you're not alone in this. So maybe contact or try to find out through the school who else has twins. What has their history or their experience been like? What did they do, and how many different sets of twins have gone through the school? and kind of network with teachers and with other parents to help them see that the resources are there, and we need to make good decisions.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a member of a local chapter for MBC, then there's usually a Facebook group that chapter will have where you can kind of connect with other parents. If you're not sure how to connect with other parents in your area, send an email to office@multipleburstcanada.org. And I'll actually put that in the broadcast, and we'll see what we can do to connect you with somebody who knows how to connect with the multiple birth families in your area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The websites of the teacher or of the twin organizations also do have many resources that can be accessed by the schools. So, that may be another way to go. And I think I've included those, or I can send those to you as well. The one checklist from Preety actually came from twinsandmultiples.org, which is a website that's housed in Australia, but it's extensive with information that parents can use with making the school decisions.
And we have two documents on the MBC website. One is tips for parents and one is tips for educators. And those will be included in the email that you get after the webinar. We had talked a little bit about the boy-girl twins. Someone had a question. I'm the one with the boy-girl twins.
Okay.
So I wanted to say that we chose to keep our kids together through their kindergarten years, and then we started to ask them, and they were fine to stay together. And I'm not going to lie, they're fine, and it's one set of homework. I'm not going to lie that was not a consideration in our lives with two older girls. And my kids did fine. And then grade 5, my son said, I don't care if I'm with her. All I want is a man teacher. And so it worked out that there was a female teacher my daughter had wanted forever, and there was a man teacher teaching in grade 5, and so they were separated. And that was the year that we discovered that my son had a minor learning disability that I had always put down to him being the only boy in our house.
Mm-hmm.
Boys are different than girls. Boys pay less attention than girls. And so it was this teacher and him having more one-on-one, I guess, that brought that to light. We kept them apart until 8th grade. And again, I said, no matter what your graduation year experience is, I want it to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were together for grade 8. And now this year they've started high school. And out of 8 classes, taking the exact same 8 classes, they've only had one class together through the whole year. So they've had both experiences. So I think it made it a little easier for the high school that they hadn't always been together, because they will not be always together in high school.
Right.
And so I think it just made that transition a little bit better. But that is the choices that we made. We didn't find it was as difficult to keep them together as it is for some kids if they compete, because the boy-girl thing, they didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not as hard to separate them because they already had the different friends and they already had the different experiences. So just a little bit point of view there.
Right, right. And you do bring up a very good issue. If the twins are in separate classes, or even triplets in 3 different classes, in the same year, they could have very different experiences. And the most disheartening experience is where one class is doing exciting activities all the time, has a great teacher, or an animated teacher, and another class has more of the traditional not so exciting type of activities, and both of those children are coming home and relating their day, and then they compare with each other, and it's really hard to explain to the children, well, teachers just have the right to teach differently. I think we have to kind of that's part of the decision to either separate or put together, because the quality of the teachers or the type of experience they're going to have in the school is going to be part of the equation. So we really have to consider that.
We had that year. That was our grade 6 year. Two
Yeah.
completely different teachers, and me thinking, oh, if only I'd chosen to put them back together this year, maybe they both would have gotten that great teacher. Maybe they both would have, you know. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Now, I
it's,
had a different experience where I had split up the boys, and one of them had a really, I don't know, I'll call her a taskmaster, but, she was really, here's what you're doing and everything. And then the other child had a really laid back teacher. And now we were really lucky in that the teachers actually matched the personalities of our twins. But
Mhm.
I just thought, oh my goodness, what if it had been switched? It would have been horrendous. Now, as it happened, it turned out quite good. But wow, like the styles were so different.
Right.
It could have been a disaster.
Exactly.
and I think that's one of the things to remember as parents is that when we're dealing with singleton kids, we often don't get any choice as to where our children end up with what teacher and what class. And so we have to alleviate that guilt that we might feel because one gets a better teacher than the other or a better match than the other. Because when we're dealing with our singletons, we don't have any choices.
Right.
So, and I would say that my other big piece of advice for parents, if they can at all possible, is to get involved in the parent council, in the volunteer time at their school,
Exactly.
to get to know the teachers, the principal, the secretary, because then when it comes time to make that decision, they know that who you are. They know, that you're a reasonable person, that, you want what's best for your kids and the other kids in the school. And I found that I didn't have to fight the way that some parents did because they knew who I was and why I was asking.
Exactly. And, going in with a positive attitude, with volunteering, offering to do things for the school or for the teacher, for the classes, it puts you in a position where you can provide information, not just on your children, but on children and twins in general. And I think that adds to the influence that we might have for flexible policies in the schools. Now, going back to the different classes, can you imagine how traumatic it would be if one of the children has a special learning need that cannot be met or is not met? And, that needs to be part of the placement decision as well as their social, how they get along. There are some twins in second grade that don't want to be in the same class. And so obviously you would want to make sure you bring them into the conversation as well and don't just spring the decision on them as far as placement.
Yeah. I would say that is very important.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I just put out a question there. I've been going through the questions that have come into the Skype Q&A, and I think we've covered off everything that's been in the queue. But I would say if we haven't, or if you have any other questions, just type them into us because this has been really great. This has been
yes.
good. Keep the questions coming.
Right.
I was going to say one thing, John, to remember that to look at your school board's policy. So if you talk to the teacher and the teacher says, I think those kids absolutely need to be separated and gives you no reason, then you follow your school board's policy, which is to then go to your principal and see that. Then you go to your superintendent and you move up the line in order. As parents, we sometimes want to jump to the top of the heap.
Exactly.
But you'll find that you'll get a lot more cooperation and a lot more success if you go up the ladder the way that they ask you to do. It may take you a little longer, but it is more respected as a parent and an administrator. They do respect that a lot more. So go ahead, John.
The other thing is, armed with information, if you show them the research studies and you say, here's what the psychologists are saying, here's what what the professionals are saying, this is the research, these are the articles and what they're saying about flexible policies and these checklists, showing them the checklists. It's more about talking about facts and data that can't be easily disputed as much rather than just saying, well, for my child, I want this just for my child. We're really trying to make a difference for all the parents of twins that are going to come after us in the school. So I want a flexible policy, not just for my children. I want it for every set of twins that comes to the school. And the only way we're going to get that is if we really, refer back to the data and the facts and the research that's there. So, but I like, follow the chain of command, be positive, and, go with the attitude of, I want to make the teacher's year, as well as the parents' year and the children's year, the best year it can be. Because if we're all on board with that premise, we're going to make a lot more progress.
Yeah. And I would say too, listen to what the teacher has to say, in that, again, if what they say is, oh, you need to separate them, and they don't give you any reason, then that's a whole other thing. But they may have some insights that
Yes.
will to add to your decision making. So they may see some things that are happening in the classroom that you're not seeing at home. And that's just more information for you to take in to make the best possible decision that you can for your kids.
Exactly. Yes. And one of the early in early school placements, parents are often concerned about the personalities, not so much the cognitive growth of the children or what effect separation will have on their intellect, but more on their personality. And yet, as parents, we know personality is formed before they enter school. I mean, before they go to preschool. And most psychologists believe it's somewhere around age 2 that it's probably already established. So, don't let anyone tell you that the reason for separation is so they can develop their own individual personalities. Because I've heard that again and again, and that's not a valid reason for separation. Because most mothers know when their children have their personalities forming, and it's not when they enter first grade. It's not when they enter kindergarten. It's much before that. So, I've heard that a lot from different teachers that are concerned.
Let me tell you, John, my kids, their personalities were formed in the womb, man. I mean, I had one of them. We could always tell who baby A and baby B were, because baby B, who turned out to be Daniel, had this really fast heartbeat, and he was always moving. And baby A just lay there, kind of relaxed, and he was stretched out, and that totally suits their personalities. Like
yes.
That was right in the womb.
And you are exactly right, because in most recent years, with the technology that we actually have pictures of twins in the womb where they are interacting, and they know that each other is present at that point in their life. So personality development and social development for twins, can't say this for individuals, but for twins, actually begins pre-birth, which is amazing if you think about it. So remember, any decision we're going to make with these children is not from birth forward. Some of this development has happened even pre-birth. And so that's a great respect for the emotional bond between twins as well. So that's some really exciting research to show school boards and to show teachers that it is a very, very strong bond, and the personality develops very early.
Yeah.
So some other factors to consider are actually the school size is going to matter. How many classrooms in a particular grade is going to matter. I mean, your decision whether to separate or keep together might be limited. Some really small schools, there isn't a policy because they don't even have the ability to separate twins, so they may be kept together. Or they may be kept together, though, only for part of the day, because if one twin needs special services, then obviously they might be leaving the room for those special services or disability services. So even in where they are kept together, there may be times when one twin can receive special services.
Yeah.
We have to go ahead.
I was going to jump in there and say I also know that one of the other things to take into consideration is the friends of each of the the children in
Yes.
question, because now when I was pregnant, one of my coworkers, who was a twin himself, sat down with me and talked to me about his experiences as, one of a set of twins. And he said one of the things that had a really great big impact on his development growing up was that him and his brother were both friends with this little girl, and the school policy was to split kids, to split twins. And so what happened is that his brother was put in the classroom with this girl that they were both friends with, and so then it became 2 and 1 instead of the 3 musketeers,
Oh,
and that changed. And I know that when we're looking at our boys, and they're in separate grades, we did consider which of their friends or who was in with each of them, to make sure that they still had, each of them had some friends that were with them, and especially the friends that they share, because they do, being both boys, they do share friends.
mhm,
And we try and kind of, that all comes into consideration of where to place them and what decisions to make.
mhm.
And I was just reading that Heather was answering a question that came in about triplets, and I thought that was really great, Heather. Do you want to explain what you wrote there?
Well, we had friends that they had 2 girls and a boy, and as the kids got older, there was only 2 classes. So they'd been together for a long time, but then there was only 2 classes in their school, and so every year somebody got to be alone, and the other 2 got to be together, and they really found that it really strengthened their son's bond with each of his sisters.
Mhm.
Because being that odd man out kind of thing. And then there was a couple of years that the girls were together, and it really helped their son find his own friends and, just be a guy and that kind of thing. So it was an option for them. The one that was alone always knew that the others were there,
Right.
but they all got to experience it in each way, which was
Yes.
nice.
Yes. That's very good. And parents can prepare their children for that by allowing them to engage in activities outside of school where they maybe 2 of the triplets will be engaged in this activity, and maybe one would be alone in some other activity or not even want to participate. Maybe 2 of them want to be in a play and one would rather just stay home and read a book.
Yeah.
Parents, you have a wealth of experience and knowledge about your children that you need to bring to the teacher and kind of inform the teacher about the experiences the children have had so that the decision can be made. But many times, what we prepare the children for before they enter school will help them do better in school. And so, even most parents of twins make it a point that they engage in activities with each child, sometimes separately, sometimes together, sometimes with other siblings. And we haven't talked about the key of this. One of the other points that needs to be considered in the placement decision are other siblings in the school. If the twins have other non-twin siblings in the school, we need to consider that as helping make the decision, because it is easier if a family has other children in the school or who have already gone through the school and they see their brothers and sisters at home. It's a little bit easier sometimes to make this transition, whereas if it's only a family with one set of twins and there are no other siblings in the school, then the decision has to be considered from a different angle. So that's another consideration. So having siblings around kind of paves the way or can make the transition a little smoother for many families.
That's great.
I remember the first year that my second daughter had graduated, and the twins were, for the very first time, the only McAuleys in their school. And I remember it was a big deal for them because they've never been alone. I mean, they've never been alone,
Exactly.
but they've never been the oldest McAuleys anywhere. And
Yeah.
that was pretty cool for them.
Right. They need a time to be themselves in the family, to feel like they are the representatives of the family and that they're in school. And that's, their time to shine. So that's really important.
Yeah.
So.
So we just have a few minutes left in our time together. I just wanted to see if there was any last thoughts that that you wanted to share with our audience. John, why don't you start if you have anything else that we haven't mentioned or you want to just emphasize?
Well, I want to go back over some of the main points of what we've been talking about tonight. First of all, the best policy is a flexible policy. No decision should be seen as a permanent decision, because the professional course of action would be to revisit the situation, to see if there is a change for the next year. And then the most important years for the placement decision are really kindergarten through grade 3. So those are the times when teachers really need to be concerned with the placement decision. So we're not asking every teacher every year to look at every set of twins and make the placement decision. We're really most concerned about those first years in school. And of course, if a child has a preschool experience, that would ease the decision-making process as well, because you can look back and see, well, how did they do in preschool? Maybe they were together, maybe they had times when they were apart. That could be part of the placement decision as well. We also emphasize that we want to work with teachers and administrators, and the best way to work with them is to provide information in a non-confrontational way, to be positive, and to consider all the needs of the children, not just the cognitive, but also the social and their talents and their interests as well. So those are the main ideas that I would like to emphasize. Is there anything else that I think we did I think we just scratched the surface maybe in this.
We could probably talk for days on this, couldn't we?
Right. But maybe there are other ways we're talking about putting other information out there and revising some fact sheets for parents. So again, keep in contact with your local twin organization, your support organization. We are stronger if we share knowledge among ourselves and really try to support each other. I think parenting is hard enough, but having twins is even more challenging. So the only way we can really make progress is really to work together and to support each other.
Yeah.
So that's basically what I would say.
I agree.
And I think sometimes teachers' views on twins and triplets are very media, movie, TV show based. So,
Yes.
If you were going in and you want to say, well, my kids aren't the Parent Trap, or like reference something that's really an awkward multiple moment in media, and sort of dispel that. And I put it right on the table.
Yes.
Because they're, if they haven't experienced other kids, or they knew one set of twins and those boys were terrors, or, like to bring those kind of things right up into people and not let them just think about it, but make them talk about it. So
Exactly.
we do have one other good piece of news for everyone, is that John has agreed to be a speaker at this year's 40th anniversary conference coming up in October in Burlington. So he will do a workshop there. You'll be able to meet him face to face, ask your questions. I know it'll be after a lot of your kids have started school, but like we've said, it's an ongoing thing, ongoing decision. And we hope that you'll join us there and get to come meet John in person.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would encourage anyone who is kind of struggling with a school policy to advocate for your kids. So talk to the teacher, talk to the principal, talk to the superintendent, and again, reach out to us if there's anything that we can do to help, like, give you some more research and some more facts. We will certainly do that.
Yes.
All right. So this has been a fantastic discussion, and I am loath to wrap it up, but we do have to be respectful of everyone's time. So thank you so much, John, for joining us, and thank you as always to my co-host Heather. You're fantastic. I I want to just highlight our next webinar, which is on Sunday, April 15th at 8 o'clock. That's Sunday as well. It's going to be about traveling with kids. So for anyone that's thinking about doing some traveling this summer, this is the webinar for you. We're going to have myself and Heather will be hosting it again, and we're going to have a travel expert with us, someone who I've known for forever, and who has actually helped me book many of my vacations, especially when the twins were young. And I remember just telling her it was a Disney cruise that we were going on. I remember just saying, I don't know, just tell me the best thing I should do, because there were so many decisions to make, and she would just, she's an expert at this, and so she has lots of tips and tricks. She has 4 kids of her own, so she is used to having to travel with kids. And then also save the date, May 27th, we're going to be doing nutrition for picky eaters. So that's coming up. Now, before you close your browser and leave us, please do click on that survey link and fill out feedback on how you felt this webinar was. And if you have any ideas for future topics, we would love to hear them. As well, there will be an email. It's scheduled to go out. It should go out any minute now. But it has the links to download 5 documents, a couple from John and a couple from NBC. And again, if those don't give you what you're looking for, then just reach out. The email address is office@multiplebirthscanada with an S .org. Oh my goodness, I'm just looking at the Q&A, and both my attempts at writing that email address have typos in them. So anyways, I will put it in the broadcast.
Heather will do it that way.
Yeah, Heather, you do that while I'm talking, because obviously I cannot talk and type at the same time. But anyways, it's office@multiplebirthscanada.org. And that's it. Thank you for joining us. I hope you got some good information out of this webinar, and I hope that we'll see you online again next month. Take care, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.